Our next talk is going to be by Ken Bremen, coming to us from HubSpot, talking about how they balance security and usability at scale. Thank you, Ken.
All right. Hello, my name is Ken Bremen, and I'm here to talk to you about how we have made our security more usable at HubSpot. We have a problem. It's an industry-wide problem. It's an old problem. It's been around since the dawn of computing. But it's reached a new scale as the internet has continued to grow and flourish. Security, usability, generally you have to pick one. It's not great. When you have a disparity between security and usability, you're working against your users. You want to find a way to find a balance between your security and usability. Because if you don't have good usability, your users probably aren't going to use your system. If you don't have good security, anyone might use your system. The one thing a company with perfect security, no security has in common, they're both probably out of business. With perfect security, it requires a tremendous amount of resource, it kills productivity, and it really annoys your users. If you have no security, you've probably already been breached. You might want to check your logs. So some examples. Most common example is authentication. Most common way to do authentication is passwords. It's the same old system we've been using forever. Someone give me a password. So we have a password. It's not great. 6 characters. We can make it stronger. We can add a number. Let's up the requirements. Let's add capital letters, symbols, 12-character minimum. Let's rotate it every 90 days. Separate passwords for QA and production. These are all terrible passwords. How do we go about making really, really strong passwords? Well, you can enforce truly random passwords, but it's going to end up as a sticky note on a monitor or passwords.txt somewhere. Passwords are hard. This is a problem. When you build your system up and you increase those complexity requirements to the point that you're frustrating your users, they're going to find clever ways to work around what you've designed. When you tick off your users, you now have 2 attacker models, your adversaries and your own users. You want to find a way to bridge this gap. So some more examples. Who here's used sudo? Quick show of hands. All right, great. Who's gone in his route to avoid typing their sudo password? A few people are owning up to it, all right. Who here has seen this screen? Everyone? Yeah. And clicked right through? Bonus points if you checked if it was, an expiration date or something, but no, right, you just want it to work. All right, another example. 2007, a huge company with billions of dollars of resources tried to up the ante. They wanted to improve security across the board, breaking previous APIs, building it up from the ground up. In 2007, Microsoft released their most secure operating system to date, Windows Vista. They tried. It was a really great effort. They rebuilt a lot of things. They really wanted to make a big difference. But oh gosh, did they make it annoying. This is terrible for the user. It's completely unusable. If you Google Vista UAC, of the 833,000 results returned, I couldn't find one that talked about something other than how to turn it off, including the top 2 links from Microsoft's support site itself. When given the choice between 2 paths, even when you nicely pave it, you don't even have to type a password to go around the right path here. People will choose the easier path. They'll choose the simpler one. They'll choose the one with the least friction. This makes authentication hard. It's an old problem that's reached a new scale. We all have accounts on hundreds of websites. So how bad can this be? I mean, we're annoying some users. We're not doing it the best of ways, but it's just usability. Right? So 2014 was a really big year. A lot of things happened in 2014. One of them, the United States Office of Personnel Management was breached. 20 million records. Really, really sensitive records. My records were in there. This was terrible. The average time for a password reset, the OPM must have incredible password requirements. Government agency, spy data, all of that. It takes 1 to 7 days to do a password reset at the OPM. That's forever. You're paying contractors by the hour to sit around waiting for their password reset. There's no way they're going to let you get away with just sitting there. So you can't possibly forget your password. That's off the table. So what are the password requirements? Well, 9 digits is enough entropy, right? 9 digits. What else is 9 digits? Social security numbers are 9 digits. The Office of the OPM acknowledged that a contractor's credentials were stolen. This one set of credentials gave blanket access to all of the records. And they didn't notice for quite some time. They clearly weren't going through the audit logs and it's like, oh, this query returned 1, this query returned 1, 20 million. More things in 2014. Another breach, Anthem. Medical records, kind of sensitive, kind of important. My records were in this breach as well. I just can't win. So they had slightly better password requirements here. I'll give them that. But the only way they discovered this breach after, I think it was 9 months, was a database administrator happened to be running queries on a database and went, oh, that's funny. I'm running more queries. Wait. That's how they found the breach. It wasn't an audit. No one was checking in why it was coming from a strange IP. No one was checking, why it was being run at 3 in the morning. The only reason it was noticed was the exact administrator that was compromised happened to be checking this database. And many, many more. Right? Name most major companies, and they've had a security breach in the last year. This is terrible. How can we fix this? How can we make this better? What can we do as engineers to solve this kind of problem? How can we take security and usability and improve both the security side and the usability side? You need to find a balance. You need to choose the right amount of security for what you're trying to protect. This is not a good example. So here are some of the things we've done at HubSpot to improve the security around authentication. So one of the simplest, almost everyone uses this. This is good, single sign-on. You want to find security domains where you can combine various things and have a single login that gets you into all of these tools. You don't want to combine all of your security domains. A compromise of your corporate email password should not get you into a production database. But if you have a different account for every possible tool, you're going to drive your users insane. Passwords. We recently redid our password complexity requirements. We wanted to really get this right. We wanted the most secure passwords in the industry. We checked off every complexity box we could find, to the point that we did a map of the QWERTY keyboard and any 3 characters that were adjacent. If your password contained that as a substring, we'd reject it. We downloaded the top most compromised password lists, and if your password contained that as a substring, we would reject it. This didn't go over real well with the users. So we got that feedback. We talked to people who were using the system. And we found ways to improve it. We found ways that we could still keep a good amount of entropy in our passwords, a good amount of security. And we added support for things like phrase-based passwords. We added 2-factor. We found other ways to get the security we needed, so we didn't have to lower that security bar, but we brought the usability bar up. Another thing we did was self-service for password resets, account locking, and that sort of thing. It's embarrassing when you forget your password. You don't want to admit it. You keep trying, keep trying. By creating a tool that allowed users to have that sort of control and ownership over common things with their account, it made a big difference. Being able to reset your own password, being able to unlock your own account without having to file a ticket and wait, or track down an administrator and be like, hey, sorry. This has really helped. Timeouts. Every session should have some timeout, but not too long of a timeout. Your average worker is in the office somewhere between like 6 and 10 hours. Do you want them authenticating every hour, once a day, once a week? Finding a good balance here, especially in the context of what the tool is. If it's their email, probably not as big a deal. If it's the root account on a database somewhere, you probably want to have a shorter timeout. Finding the right balance here will help prevent things from, people finding ways to keep their session open, like repeatedly running the same select statement over and over again so it doesn't time out. Two-factor. We added two-factor support, but rather than have it across the board for every tool all the time, we found some of the most sensitive accounts and the most sensitive tools, and we implemented two-factor authentication. And we did it sort of the traditional way. You had 6 digits that you'd have to type in whenever you wanted to use it. But for SSH, that gets pretty frustrating every time you want to SSH. So we found ways to implement session caching so that your two-factor caches between SSH sessions. This helped, but typing those 6 digits really ticked people off. It's trivial. We're engineers. You just type it. But as engineers, we're not normal. We're not regular people. We're used to this kind of friction. We're used to this kind of complexity because we deal with it every day. It's part of our job. So we went with a push solution where you have to push 1 button instead of 6. And this made a world of a difference. Suddenly, people were less frustrated with this. Another thing that we've started using is a tool called Vault. Lyft also released one called Confidant. This is from HashiCorp, and it's a tool for managing secrets, but not secrets in the sense of like a password manager. This is for machine secrets. You don't want your average user dealing with your production API keys between systems or other things like that. You want to have a secure way to store them, share them, manage them, audit them, rotate them, all of these great things. You don't want them sitting encrypted in source control somewhere or in a shared folder in Dropbox. I've seen this. I've seen this at places. You want to be using a good tool for managing your secrets. All right, so changing gears a little bit, we've covered authentication. Let's talk about authorization. Some of the things we've done around authorization at HubSpot start with sane defaults. This is going to sound really trivial, but how many times have you had to file a ticket into your ticketing system to do your job? Like, this is something you should have already had access to from day one. You had to file a ticket, you had to wait, eventually it comes through, maybe if you need to do this over and over again, it's 10 tickets. Starting with sane defaults so that your users can do exactly what they need to do from day one without that extra friction really helps. We also built a tool called JITA, just-in-time access. You can't account for every possible thing someone might need to do. You can have a sudo file a mile long, and someone will end up needing some obscure command at some point. By introducing JITA, a user in a time of need, the site's down at 3 a.m., can push a button and say why they need extra privileges. And they get it within about 10 seconds. This is huge. You don't see this at a lot of companies. If you need additional permissions, you file a ticket with the ops team. The ops team's like, why do you really need this? There's back and forth. Making it a button and asking forgiveness later, if If someone's doing this all the time, all right, there's a problem. You should review that. Is this something they should always have access to, or something that, well, they shouldn't be doing this? But this gives you that feedback loop. So you have authentication, authorization, accountability. Some of the things we've done around accountability at HubSpot. We have a code of use good judgment. This is hard to do in the security space. You have to trust, but verify. And so we've done a tremendous amount of automation around verifying what people have done. You can't have a JITA-like system where people can push a button, get full root, do whatever, unless you're also watching what they're doing. The Anthem breach clearly wasn't verifying. So we built a tool called CCS, Compliance and Control Service. And what this does is it breaks down audits into small, reasonable, contextual chunks. A lot of times at companies, you hear about an audit and you're thinking, all right, this is going to be a massive endeavor covering the last 18 months, and I'm having trouble remembering what I had for breakfast 2 weeks ago. Why did I SSH into that server 2 weeks ago? If you have your audits happening routinely, they're small, they're focused, you can ask the person, hey, why were you on that server at 3 a.m. last night? You can make it much more reasonable, much more tractable, and it makes your audits useful. They're not just a compliance checkbox anymore. By doing regular audits, you can crank that feedback loop. You can see why people are escalating privileges, why people are doing things differently. This can be an educational opportunity. This can be a way to reprimand people if they're really, really misbehaving over and over again. But ultimately, you can't trust if you don't verify. Another thing we've done is code reviews. Our software development policy is you have to code review everything before you ship it. But if things are on fire, do you really want to page someone else on your team, wait for them to get online to code review a one-liner when your site is down? No. You want to ship it. You want to send it out. So we added support to be able to ship something without a code review, but only if it's urgent. And then you have to answer why you did it within 24 hours. You have to talk with other people. They review it after the fact. But having that freedom to override these constraints, but do it in a controlled fashion. Planning for exceptions. Exceptions are a supported workflow. Makes things better. So at engineering at HubSpot, we're constantly iterating. We're growing, we're changing. You have to continually balance the security and usability of your systems, because as time goes on, hopefully, companies are growing, they're changing, you have new roles, you have more people in roles. You need to continuously balance these things. Always change it. Don't rely on it just because it worked 6 months ago. Constantly revisit it. So this wouldn't be a HubSpot talk without a call to action. So I ask you, find a point of friction. Find an old problem that's been around forever, and find a new way to scale it, a new way to improve it. Thank you.